Good morning. My name is Tom Cross, and today we're talking about accelerating revenue performance via strategic customer assessments. This is an ongoing series of updates and ideas on how to really ramp up your revenues, reduce your costs, and most importantly, improve customer satisfaction. All questions will be answered at the end, or you're welcome to email me at cross@gocross.com. I'm here to answer your questions now, and if you prefer in private, by email. I have a few ideas of what else we're doing here. We also do this, tomorrow we're doing another webinar called Market Validation on Business AI. It's really a critical concept approach to how to manage and accelerate and really validate through due diligence your AI, because you'll see tomorrow both Fortune and Forbes have had major articles on about how AI has failed in many ways. We also do one on digital meetings. We also do a few other ones on, I like this one. This is really a fun one to do, on executive seminar on building a competitive intelligence agency or corporate intelligence agency. In today's world, you cannot gather too much information. We also do critical crisis management. And this one today is accelerating business faster via strategic customer assessments. A few road rules I have. My job is to speak. Your job is to listen. If you get done before me, you're free to go out to play. Or looking at another way, you can read 5 times faster than I can speak, and I'm certainly counting on that. So moving right along. Here we go. Here are the top 10 building strategic customer assessments: customer, contact, channels, media, channels, distribution, connections, communications, collaboration, calls to action, crisis, and coming sooner. We'll go through each one so you don't have to read that so closely. One of the things we kind of talk about is what assessments are not. They're not just data diving into your CRM system. They're not just mining your marketing tools. Not about what we know, but what we're trying to find out is what we don't. It's not about making sales today, though we certainly like to feel that if you do this thing right, you will accelerate sales tomorrow. And, you know, it's really not about talking, but listening and learning about from the customer. I get a lot of questions about that. It's that what our assessments are. What are they? You know, looking beyond what you're selling to what you're selling through and to and through. And what I mean by that is through the channel. Often people don't realize that channel partners are really not the ultimate customer. They're just a vehicle, a retailer in the whole process. They don't want stuff or products or solutions on their shelf. They want the customer to rip them off their shelf or via their websites. So it's position your content for their sales channel. You kind of revamp your whole approach. And there's all these other things that we're going to kind of talk through and where the benefits are. Kind of what we also find is that as a result of doing these, that there are real results. You can read these. These are quotes from real customers. And what we found out there is that customers think they know customers, but they don't. You know, vendors don't know what the customers are. They think they're talking. They're talking to the channel. Channel tells them one thing, but in fact, the customers are going in a different direction, and no one really knows what is going on. So it kind of gives you a fresh, third-party approach to looking at the channel and customers, and being prepared for their future. Okay, number 1, customer. Now and forever will always be about the customer. So you really kind of have to figure that out, because what I find is most people really have no idea who their customers are. They think they do, but they really don't. We put this slide together to kind of show you that, who is a real customer at the table here, which is the real decision maker, and who are just involved and showing up for the meeting. Most customers don't really know who they are and know much about them. That's really interesting. They know their name, they know their location, maybe a little bit about the business they're selling to, but they really don't know, who's involved in the customer decision-making process. I put this list together because it kind of gives you a flavor for, what are customers. And these are like, 25 different kinds of customers out there. And you need to kind of assess who they are and go after them individually and create, customer models and modalities for how you approach these customers, both in vertical and horizontal ways. I think it really helps you kind of get your arms around, here's our OEM customer, we're going to do this for them. And here's our channel partner who sells to SMB, we're going to do this, and so on and so forth. The other thing is that those involved in the decision of your solution, you will never know all of them. That's really the most important point. You're really kind of maybe talking to one person, but that may be the analyst who's just gathering information, but it's got to move around to a lot of decision-making committees, up the food chain, across the C-levels, outsiders, consultants, etc. And so how you manage that process is very complex, and if you don't really get your arms around it, you're not going to really understand where they're going. Yeah, what are the customers telling, what customers are really telling them about themselves? That's really kind of, they may not know themselves. And so you really need to kind of think beyond who you're really talking to understand their business and where they're going, because we find as things progress through here, it's getting more and more complex every day to understand how these customers are going through M&A, business model changes, strategic decision-making, et cetera. What content are you providing them to help them evaluate you? That's really understanding. What are you telling them about yourself? You're also telling them, but meaning that content is really, this is the number 2 part, that is really aligned with what the customer is thinking about there, and and how they react to it. It's not just metrics either. It's say, hey, did you read our white paper? Did you attend our webinar? Did you go to our trade show, et cetera? And evaluate, just not what I call drive-by marketing. People drive by, they grab your white paper, your case study, et cetera, and they go away without you really knowing why they're doing that. And really not a lot of follow-up. And I don't mean by just following up by your salespeople. Salespeople tend to go, well, did we answer all your questions when you downloaded that white paper, et cetera? That really often tends to put off customers, because you're really just kind of like, expecting, throwing stuff and expecting them to stick in their minds. We also found that customers are spending a lot of time in pre-purchase, what I call due diligence, avoiding the resume generating event factor before they go to your websites, and looking for all these kind of different kind of information, call to action, thought leadership, all these kind of processes that exist out there, so that they really get a better feel for you. Because the RGE, resume generated event factor, is they don't want to lose their job by buying your product. Think about what they really are looking for out there. Take your time, find out what they are before you write all these white papers. Do all this stuff, because in other words, you really want to end up with creating and delivering some stopping content. And I mean by some stopping is your customers are scrolling through the screen on their smartphones. So keep that in mind, that you're just not just writing content for content's sake. Make sure that these kinds of information. Also, keep in mind that these customers are doing a lot of due diligence through who else you're working with. If you're doing a lot of Facebook advertising or social media advertising, make sure that, what are people's impressions of you doing that? Is that the best way to do things? I'm a personal fan of creating and generating your own social media networks. It's certainly possible today, and, kind of see what's going on out there. So you don't want to be caught up in some sort of swirl or tornado that's affecting your business because you got involved with somebody else's social network. We've all seen that happen on many of the social networks, and I won't go into all the details, but Mark Zuckerberg is testifying before Congress today, and guess who's testifying tomorrow? The CEO of Boeing. So keep in mind that if you're a downline supplier to a major company who's had a major crisis, you're going to have a major impact on your business. Research and analyze customer internal and external content messaging. If possible, again, this is getting out in front, getting out and spending time with the C-levels and all the people in the organization of your customer. It's not just talking to one person, it's gaining access to other people, because you may get, certainly the larger company, you may be talking again to the business analyst, but the CEO, CXO is making the decision. So make sure that you're really kind of tracking that and getting involved in many different ways to do that. Here's some content we put together that helps you kind of align your content with the customer's life cycle. So again, early stage, gain, later stage close, and the later stage after is keeping them as retaining. A lot of customers don't do any part on any of these phases, or they do them badly, or they think that if we do a web, it's going to impact all stages of the buying cycle. And that's certainly not true. Once you go out there and talk to customers, you'll find out what they're really looking for and find out more about how to help them. This really gets you involved in helping improve thought leadership. And you certainly can use influencer marketing to gain access to these people, because of some of the influencers out there have access to a lot of other people. accelerates your channel engagement, and improves lead generation. And I also think that, part of this stuff is that, you're really keeping your head out of the sand as opposed to sticking it in the sand. Because what happens out there is that, when you look at the channels meeting, number 3, what channels are they looking at? What channels are they promoting their products for? How are they using your products in their own solutions? So part of this thing is designing and directing your own destiny, rather than kind of reacting or trying to predict what's going on. You cannot control their messaging, but you can control content on your own channels. So make sure that's kind of aligned with what the customers are doing, especially channel partners. Channel partners are not interested in having your branded content on their website. They want unbranded, white labeled content that helps them promote their business, because that, again, they are the retailer out there. So again, I've got story after story of people promoting themselves through channel partners, and it just sits there because it's not useful, and the channel partner doesn't want it. It's not helping the channel partner doing that. And you can buy them dinners until heck freezes over, but it's not going to impact your business. Also understand, how is your product being used? Is it really being used to be part of another product, or is it just being part to help them run their business? And understand that if your product is part of their product lifecycle, where are you in that process, etc. And if you don't go out there and find that out, then you won't know what happens when they do an EOL, end of life, on that product, and your solution is no longer needed. So keep that in mind. Go through the whole process. Get really close to the customers. Realize that this is a really kind of interesting channels of distribution, that increasingly your products and solutions are involved in a vast array of other supply chains, logistics, apps, ideas, concepts, the whole end food chain of ideas out there. And so it's not just one thing, it's many things out there. And I think it really kind of provides a stickiness to your product that has long-term value if you continue to do it right. Are your customers building their own apps for selling, customer engagement, and customer support? Are you involved in that process? How are you involved in their rewards programs? How are you helping them to pull that, again, your product through their channel, right? So what social selling technologies are they using? Did they build or buy? So omni-channel social media is a complex process, and I don't think that in many cases things have changed over the life cycle, because people still want to be contacted directly, provide that warm, fuzzy feeling that, yes, we're going to make sure that you don't fail. This kind of moves into that, what I call this, build your own slider process. We'd like to think that a lot of products are just self-serve. Let the customer figure it out, throw all this stuff on our website, let them meander, figure out through all our white papers and all our stuff how to use our products. And in reality, what they want to do is want you to take them, go see them, talk to their people, get involved in their committees, do part of their due diligence. Because again, if you're not out there with those customers, they're talking to somebody else. So make sure that you understand where you fit along and you can certainly build different content for different things. Hey, if you know what you're doing, click here. If you don't know what you're doing, click here. We'll fly you in. We've had one company used to fly people on their company jet to see the demo. This moves you from a nice to have to a must have product, because what you find out there is that budget cycles, as much as you like to think as you have a cure for cancer out there, they're still working through 2017, 2018, maybe 2019 budgets, much less, trying to work on budgets for 2020, which are probably already cooked and baked by now. Because, again, they don't have unlimited funds, even if you've got the greatest solution in the world, because, again, they've got to be integrating other solutions they need that have a value in their whole processes. The next thing is that I like to think of your website is really a tool out there, the self-serve, sales-serve process, nice to have, must to have kind of thing. Make sure that your website has got customizable content on there. Is it for small locations, large locations? You don't know what the customer is out there. And the diversity of customers is mind-boggling. So make sure you've got it by business roles, by business types, business titles, etc. Make sure that there are different levels of content out there. Maybe the business analyst, maybe a coder. He may want different content than the CEO or CFO who is looking for TCO, ROI, impacts on their business. So as you kind of move through this process, you have to understand, where is their organization going? Make sure that you're kind of lined up there, because again, if you're not tracking where they're going, you're not going to be there where they end up. What is their organizational velocity? This is a concept I came up with a long time ago, is understanding their speed of decision making. You may think it's ideally you'd like to. Again, you may need to be in their budget for next year. So now's a good time to start doing that, and be patient if you're a sales manager to understand that, especially in cybersecurity and some enterprise complex sales out there, they're really a long time. I used to say 3 by 3, now it's 4 by 4, 3 times the money, 3 times the time. In other words, you've got to be prepared to spend 3 times the money to get to the customer and 3 times the time. In other words, it's typically 3 years. Could be 5 years. I've been working with one that's now on 4 years plus. They haven't quite got the content right. They haven't got the product right. And the customer's not quite right either. So make sure, you may be agile, but on the other hand, make sure that the customer is agile enough to integrate your products and solutions into their processes out there. So as that moves ahead out there, you want to be collaborating with that customer, working on customer engagement, working on customer lead generation, working on the whole process out there. Again, how are they going to use it? Again, identify who the customer is, channel, direct, enterprise, small business, etc. And then make sure that you've got all this content ready to help them make the sale or use the product. Because, as one person says, you can't sell what you don't know, and users don't implement what they don't understand. And the last part of it is a confused mind will always say no. So keep that in mind, that you need to talk first and listen last, because that's not the right way to do it. It really is listen, listen, listen. So I think that what happens is that salespeople tend to talk too much. Collaboration is also, really get involved and understand what they're looking for. Listen to what they're saying. I think most times we listen to respond. It's not like we're listening to what they're really saying, that we're just listening to respond to what they're saying. So if they say this, we say that. We have a script for everything out there, and I don't think a lot of this stuff is really applicable to scripting out there. Seriously, what is said is not what is heard, nor what is done. So keep that in mind, that communication will always fail except by chance. Strategically, the faster you can communicate, the faster you can change, and those that change the fastest will be the most successful. So make sure you're changing your organizational velocity is matching up with where your customers and channel partners are going. Make sure that you've got this whole process. Now, this one kind of circles back in the sense is that what are the direct actions you can take today? Most of the time, people go, here's our information, have a nice day, and there's no call to action. We all see call to actions every day, especially in the business to consumer business. Unbelievable offers out there. But in the business-to-business world, they tend to not be there. But in fact, they're a really important part of the process. How can we bundle solutions together to make more value for our customer? Because again, the value may not be today, but may be long-term. So yeah, it takes a long time to get these things involved in the whole process, and be ready with all your calls to action, your BOGOs, buy one, get ones, etc., rewards programs, etc., because the airlines built their business based on corporate travelers getting those points for themselves. Incredible business. So keep that in mind, how you can use that for your own business and your own channel out there. Crisis. Crises occur every day. They're getting more complex. They have more impact, whether it be Facebook, Boeing, or whatever. If you're part of the downline process, etc., of any kind of product, the latest forecast for the 737 MAX is February, but that could be pushed off. And sadly enough, the deaths of the first people was just a few days away from here. So be ready for the crisis. Expect the crisis, because it will happen. Because if you're a passenger or a Boeing part supplier, you could have a major impact on your business. The next part is, create and build your own 7 by 24 emergency management team. I call it a crisis management, reputation management team, whatever you want to call it. But whether that's, Boeing or whatever, you're downline from them, if you're a Boeing part supplier, you've still got to be responding to the crisis of the parts you made, because it's hard to say whether the part you made could be part of the problem. So keep in mind when you look at especially when you look at food crises, you'll see that in many cases, they've never figured out where the cause was. They can track it back to the farmer or whatever, but there's still no process to really understand it. Make sure that you're really responding to customer concerns on a 7 by 24 basis. because you're demonstrating that you're really involved in the process. You're not hiding away. You're fully transparent on this whole thing. I think that the other kind of impact, other crises could impact because, the retailer you're using, again, like a Boeing, they're the manufacturer, you're the retailer, et cetera. So how does that affect your business? Keep those things in mind that as you move forward that, crisis is going to come in all kinds of fashions. I like to think is delete all your social media accounts and build your own social network instead of the toxic nonsense, misinformation, cyberbullies, shamer, hater, whatever, and deep fake that is coming, because you cannot predict, you cannot react to all this. You can only direct your own messaging. It takes a more proactive approach to your content and messaging, so you're calling the customers, letting them know about the crisis, rather than them going, well, I never heard from Fred. I guess we should find another supplier out there. Keep in mind is that a lot of people are still confused out there about social media, and especially Twitter. I think people are very confused about that. And so you kind of have to understand that, put yourself in their moccasins. If they're confused about it, make sure that you're reducing that confusion, because again, a confused mind always says no. There's lots of ways to do this process. Read this Steve's book. It's pretty interesting. I'm not sure about the politics, but he did talk about what social media is a flamethrower on any issue. And I think if you keep that in mind, you'll understand what the impacts are. They call it a digital flamethrower. And I think that as you kind of think about that, you see Twitter posts kind of get blown out of proportion, accelerated in all kinds of different directions out there. This is a great movie if you want to understand about propaganda and how it was used. Last part of the crisis is the CEO as CRO, Chief Reputation Officer, says 50% of their time are spent articulating and defending themselves and the company on public policy issues. I think Zuckerberg's time before Congress is going to be more, not less. There's going to be more lawsuits, et cetera. So whether it be a Facebook or your business, et cetera, make sure that the CEO is fully involved, fully trained and prepared to be the crisis manager as well. I mean, many of these CEOs through the whole process. So coming sooner is what the future is all about. So make sure that you're really kind of prepared for a long sales cycle, a long business cycle, et cetera. You need to walk in your customers' moccasins, and the closer you are to them, you'll understand where you fit in that process. It doesn't mean you're not going to get kicked off the bus, but it does mean that you at least have some clue as to what's going on. As you may have seen, I wrote a book on artificial intelligence, which is the second one. I like to think is that, what people talk about their AI toasters out there is just fake AI. Call it machine intelligence, call it what it is, call it big data, call it something. But, when you talk about intelligence, make sure you really mean intelligence out there, because, it's coming, but how intelligent things will be come tomorrow. You'll hear more about that AI business validation process. It's very complex, and to push out that you really have AI when you really don't, I think is just false advertising, and that doesn't really help you at all. Coming sooner, here's examples of what I call successful AI strategies. I'm not going to go through these. They're in the handouts in the paper that you can download, and you can read more about those. But I think you understand that things are changing out there on a very rapid basis. But make sure that whatever solution you're building, you're saying AI has, make sure it really has some kind of intelligence and not just some improved search engine to find the weather forecast for tomorrow. I think that the failures of AI are profound, and that's the reason why they exist out there. And if you don't do the validation, you're not going to understand why your product failed and why your business, is suffering because you told your customers you had AI and it did, and you really didn't, and it failed. So I think it's more tragic than they could ever imagine. A little humor out there. I like to have a humor at this. I'm not a robot. Who's the real robot here? If you do have a robot, they could be get pushed back on problems out there, because again, AI may not only solve one problem, but not enough problems in your business. If you hire people, there's a lot of AI sales tools out there, and I'm not convinced at all of whether they're really impacting or it can improve the sales quota out there. The next part about this whole thing is that there's going to be other impacts that we cannot anticipate Just like we've heard about road rage out there, there's going to be what I call robot road rage out there. And who knows, you could be in the crosshairs of the robot. Lastly, coming sooner, start building that map of the future. Make sure that your customers are involved in your roadmap, your product map, your solutions map. Make sure that they understand. Make sure you understand from them what, how is it aligned with what you're going. Because, they have different ideas out there. Because, again, how your product impacts their business, could be a lot of ways different than what you think. I like to think that quantum computing is going to be coming a lot faster than we think out there. Game theory, gaming is certainly a part of the process, et cetera. And person-to-machine and machine-to-machine technology is certainly on the way in for all kinds of doing different things. Again, you cannot predict competitive attacks, either in M&A, advances in tech, or anything else, nor react to them. You can only direct your customers to your strategy, which is why you do these kinds of assessments. Make sure that your customers, one time, a long time ago, the company was interested in our software solution from a client, and the client said, well, the real problem is between your product runs on one platform, but between my office and my boss's office is the IBM office. So IBM was a lot closer to the CIO than anyone else. So make sure that you're part of this process as well, how close you are to the customer. Make sure you understand who the customer really is, and that's really the whole point of this whole process. Strategic assessments work. Here are examples. We've done many for the last 20 years. Some are very exciting, very in-depth, et cetera. Some are very strategic, we call it economic development, looking at a region or across the nation to provide economic development forecasting. AI is certainly a strong interest out there. But again, AI is not just coding more algorithms to solve narrowly focused problems. You've got to look at AI, or at least let the customer know what you're doing with these problems, solutions. There's no one kind of assessment. Each one is unique. You can determine the key accounts. As I said, go through that list, go OEM, white label, whatever. We're going to go after these kind of customers and go out and start talking to them. And you never stop talking to them. That's really part of it too. Begin the assessment process is art, not a science. As research takes time, you develop analytics. I'm not a big fan of just, oh yeah, you got 3.5 versus 3.6. That doesn't really tell you anything. You got 572 responses versus 700 the last time. What does that really tell you? Was it the content different? How different was the messaging out there? Evaluate results like legal discovery. Talk to people. Again, audit the auditor. Who talked to them? Find out what they are finding out there. Is there confirmation across multiple platforms, multiple geographic locations, multiple demographics? Keep doing it. That's the whole process. You never can stop doing it. Here's the top 10. We're kind of up to the bottom of the hour, so I'm almost done now. I want to thank you for attending this short webinar today. Again, if you have questions, please email them, or you're welcome to ask them at any point, because usually the archive value is more value than the live value. Here's some of the other work we're doing, again, in AI market validation, digital meetings. I like this one. This is another good one, Competitive Intelligence Agency. If you've seen anything about this whole process, you see strategic assessments kind of get organized into some sort of competitive intelligence agency, because you're doing it to respond to changing customer and changing competitive landscapes out there. Crisis management is all part of this process. Each of these webinars is all kind of themed around better communications. And on that note, I want to thank you for spending time today, and I wish you all the best. Thanks again.